July 17, 1944. 7:23 hours. Outside the village of St. Lo, Normandy, Obersturmführer Michael Wittmann sat in the commander's cupola of his Tiger-1 heavy tank when his radio operator reported American armor approaching from the north. Wittmann raised his binoculars and smiled. Shermans, a dozen of them, advancing in line formation across the open fields. Their 75mm guns were no threat to his Tiger's frontal armor. Their thin armor would surrender to his 88mm gun at ranges where they could not effectively return fire. This would not be a battle. This would be target practice. Wittmann had faced Shermans before. The previous month, at Villers-Bocage, his single Tiger had destroyed over 20 Allied vehicles in 15 minutes. The Americans called their M4 Sherman a medium tank. German tankers had other names. Tommy Cooker, the British, called it, for how quickly it caught fire. Ronson, after the lighter company whose motto was, "Lights the first time, every time." He keyed his microphone to the other 4 Tigers in his formation. American Shermans ahead. Standard engagement. We take them at range. They cannot hurt us, and they know it. His crew laughed. The loader chambered an armor-piercing round. The gunner centered the sight on the lead Sherman. This moment would mark a fundamental misunderstanding that would cost the Wehrmacht dearly throughout the campaign in France. What German tank commanders saw as American technical inferiority was actually American tactical doctrine they did not yet comprehend. The Sherman was not designed to fight Tigers. The Sherman was designed to call down something far more devastating. The crisis of American armor doctrine had been building since North Africa. American tanks consistently encountered German armor that was technically superior. The Tiger War introduced in Tunisia was nearly invulnerable from the front to standard Allied tank guns. The Tiger's 80mm gun could penetrate the Sherman's frontal armor at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters. The Sherman's 75mm gun could not reliably penetrate the Tiger's frontal armor even at point-blank range. Lieutenant Clarence Smoyer, commanding a Sherman in the 3rd Armored Division, described the disparity in his diary. "We see a Tiger and we run. There is no shame in this. Our gun cannot hurt it from the front. If we stay and fight, we burn. 5 Shermans to destroy 1 Tiger is the ratio. 5 of us must coordinate to get side and rear shots while he is engaged with others. Those others usually do not survive." The American response followed 2 paths. The technical path involved developing better tanks, but the M26 Pershing would not reach Europe in significant numbers until 1945. The tactical path was more immediate and revolutionary. If American tanks could not defeat German tanks in direct combat, American tanks would not fight German tanks in direct combat. They would use combined arms tactics that exploited American advantages, specifically air superiority. By summer 1944, Allied air forces dominated the skies over France completely. The Luftwaffe had been systematically destroyed in the months leading up to the invasion. The P-47 Thunderbolt was the primary American fighter bomber supporting ground operations. A massive aircraft powered by a 2,000-horsepower radial engine, the Thunderbolt could carry up to 2,500 pounds of bombs, or 8 5-inch rockets. The Thunderbolt's most effective anti-armor weapon was the High-Velocity Aircraft Rocket, or HVAR. These 5-inch rockets, carrying 140-pound warheads, struck targets with tremendous kinetic energy. A direct hit could penetrate even heavy tank armor from above, where armor was thinnest. Multiple hits could disable or destroy any armored vehicle. The challenge was coordination. Getting fighters to attack specific targets at specific times required communication between ground forces and aircraft. The solution was tactical air control parties, radio-equipped teams attached to forward ground units. These teams could identify targets, request airstrikes, and guide aircraft onto objectives in real time. Captain James Burt, commanding a tank company in the 66th Armored Regiment, explained the doctrine in a post-battle report. "We are not designed to fight Tigers head-on. We are designed to find them, fix them in place, and call in the Thunderbolts. When we encounter heavy armor, we suppress it, mark it, and let the aircraft handle it. The Germans think we are cowards for not standing and fighting. We think we are smart for using all our advantages instead of playing their game." German commanders observed American reluctance to engage in tank versus tank combat and interpreted it as weakness. The Wehrmacht had built its armored doctrine around decisive tank combat. When American tanks avoided direct engagement, German tankers assumed it was because American crews lacked courage or their equipment was inadequate. They did not see the radio antennas on Sherman commanders' tanks. They did not understand the tactical air control parties moving with American armored columns. They did not recognize that American doctrine had evolved to exploit capabilities German forces no longer possessed. The Germans were fighting the previous conflict, while Americans were fighting a new one. General Feldmarschall Erwin Rommel understood the danger better than most. In a June 1944 letter to his wife, he wrote about Allied air supremacy with unusual candor. The enemy aircraft control the battlefield completely. Our movements are restricted tonight. When our panzers attack, they are spotted immediately and aircraft appear within minutes. We have nothing to counter this. Technical superiority in tanks means nothing if we cannot mass them without being destroyed from the air. But many panzer commanders believed armor superiority alone would prevail. They saw American tanks as inferior and assumed American doctrine reflected that inferiority rather than compensating for it. As Wittmann prepared to engage the American Shermans advancing toward his position, he was confident. His Tiger's armor would protect him. His gun would destroy them at range. What Wittmann did not know was that the Sherman formation he saw represented the bait in a trap that would define armored warfare for the next 70 years. The lead Sherman was commanded by Lieutenant Frank Griffin of the 2nd Armored Division. Griffin had spotted the Tigers the moment his tank crested the ridgeline. 4 of them, hull-down positions behind earthworks, guns already traversing toward his formation. Griffin knew the doctrine. Do not engage. Fix and mark. Call for air. His hand moved to the radio transmitter. Contact, heavy armor. 4 Tigers, grid reference 4427. Request immediate air support. We will mark with smoke. The response came within seconds from the Tactical Air Control Party. Roger, contact. Thunderbolts inbound. ETA 6 minutes. Mark targets with colored smoke. Keep them busy until the birds arrive. 6 minutes. Griffin's formation had to survive 6 minutes against 4 Tigers that could destroy them from ranges where return fire was ineffective. Keep the German tanks engaged. Make them stay in position to fight. When the aircraft arrived, the Tigers would be vulnerable. Griffin ordered his tanks to spread out and begin suppressive fire. The Shermans fanned across the field, maintaining movement. Their 75mm guns began firing, not to penetrate armor, but to create dust, smoke, and confusion. The rounds sparked off the Tigers' frontal armor ineffectively, but they forced the German gunners to acquire targets through obscured optics. Wittmann's Tiger fired first. The 80mm shell struck a Sherman in the turret. The American tank stopped immediately, smoke pouring from hatches as the crew bailed out. The other Tigers opened fire. Another Sherman was hit, catching fire. The crew escaped, but the tank was lost. The American formation did not retreat. Griffin's remaining tanks continued advancing, spreading wider, firing constantly. Smoke rounds began impacting near the Tiger positions, creating colored clouds that marked the targets. White smoke, then red, then green, creating indicators visible for miles. Wittmann watched the American behavior with confusion. They were advancing into effective fire from superior armor. They were losing vehicles, yet they continued coming, firing ineffectively, launching smoke rounds. It made no tactical sense. They are suicidal, his gunner commented, or incompetent. Wittmann said nothing. Something was wrong. American tank commanders were not suicidal. He had fought them before, and they were cautious when facing heavy armor. This behavior was different, deliberate, almost theatrical. Then he heard it. A sound that had become dreaded to every German soldier in Normandy. The deep rumble of radial engines, many of them, growing louder. He looked up. 8 aircraft were approaching from the south, flying low. P-47 Thunderbolts, their distinctive broad wings unmistakable. They were carrying rockets, and they were headed directly toward his position. Aircraft, he shouted into the radio. Jabos, take cover. But there was no cover. His Tiger was in a prepared fighting position designed to engage enemy armor. The earthworks that protected his front from tank fire did nothing to protect his thin top armor from rockets delivered from above. The lead Thunderbolt nosed down into a diving attack. The pilot had seen the colored smoke immediately. The Tigers were clearly marked, perfect targets. The P-47's gun sight centered on the leftmost Tiger. At 500 meters range, the pilot triggered his rockets. 8 HVARs left the Thunderbolt's wings in pairs, streaking downward, trailing smoke. 3 missed completely. 2 struck the earth berm in front of the Tiger. 3 rockets struck the Tiger directly. 1 hit the turret roof, penetrating the thin armor and detonating inside. The explosion was catastrophic. The Tiger's ammunition cooked off in a series of secondary explosions that blew the turret completely off the hull. The massive turret lifted into the air and crashed down 15 meters away. The second Thunderbolt attacked the next Tiger. 1 rocket struck the engine deck, penetrating into the engine compartment. The Tiger's fuel tanks ignited. Fire spread rapidly. The crew bailed out as flames engulfed the vehicle. The third and fourth Thunderbolts attacked Wittmann's Tiger simultaneously. Rockets converged on the massive vehicle. Explosions walked across the Tiger's hull and turret. 1 rocket penetrated the side armor. The explosion damaged the transmission and wounded the driver. Wittmann's Tiger could no longer move. The driver was screaming. Smoke filled the interior. Wittmann made the decision instantly. "Bail out! Everyone out!" The crew erupted from hatches, dropping to the ground and running from the crippled tank. Seconds later, another Thunderbolt made a strafing run, its .850 caliber machine guns raking the immobilized Tiger. The fourth Tiger attempted to flee, pulling out of the fighting position and backing down the slope. The maneuver exposed the thinner rear armor. A Thunderbolt pilot attacked from behind. 2 rockets struck the Tiger's rear deck, penetrating the thin armor and detonating inside. The Tiger coasted to a stop. The crew evacuated rapidly as fire spread. The entire engagement, from the first rocket launch to the evacuation of the last Tiger crew, took less than 3 minutes. 4 Tigers, the most feared tanks in the German arsenal, had been destroyed or disabled by aircraft. The Shermans had lost 2 vehicles and suffered no crew casualties. Lieutenant Griffin watched the Thunderbolts climb away. His remaining tanks held position. The German tankers were gone, fled into the countryside, knowing their vehicles were lost. Griffin keyed his radio. "Contact destroyed. 4 Tigers disabled. 2 friendly vehicles lost, no personnel casualties. Resuming advance." This was not an unusual engagement. This was how American armored forces fought in Normandy. Find the enemy, fix them, call in the air, move forward. For Wittmann, crouching in a drainage ditch, 300 meters from his burning Tiger, the experience was transformative. He had lost his vehicle not to enemy tanks, but to aircraft. The tactical situation he understood, where his technical superiority dominated, had been rendered irrelevant. Years later, after surviving an eventual capture, Wittmann described the moment in interrogation. "We trained to fight tanks. We were equipped to fight tanks. We were very good at fighting tanks. But the Americans did not fight tanks with tanks. They fought tanks with aircraft. Our armor meant nothing against rockets from above. We were defeating them on the ground while losing the battle from the air." The engagement outside St. Lo was not isolated. Across Normandy in July and August 1944, the pattern repeated daily. German armor would engage American tanks. The Americans would avoid decisive combat, suppress enemy positions, and call in fighter bombers. The aircraft would arrive within minutes and destroy German vehicles. American tank losses were significant, but sustainable. German losses were catastrophic and irreplaceable. The statistics told the story of systematic destruction. Between June 6th and August 25th, 1944, German forces lost approximately 1,500 armored vehicles. Of these, less than 25% were lost to direct fire from Allied tanks. Over 40% were destroyed by aircraft. The remainder were abandoned due to mechanical failure or lack of fuel. Allied air forces flew over 480,000 sorties during the Normandy campaign. Fighter bombers destroyed or damaged thousands of German vehicles and equipment. The psychological impact on German ground forces was as devastating as the physical destruction. Oberst Hans von Luck, commanding a panzer regiment, described the impact in his memoirs. Movement by day became impossible. Any vehicle on a road would be attacked within minutes. We moved at night, camouflage, during day. Tank commanders feared aircraft more than enemy tanks. We could fight tanks. We could not fight aircraft effectively. The doctrinal gap between American and German armored forces became increasingly apparent. German doctrine emphasized concentration of armor for breakthrough operations. But in Normandy, German attempts to mass armor were detected by aerial reconnaissance and attacked during movement. Panzer divisions attempting to concentrate for counterattacks found their assembly areas struck before operations could begin. American doctrine accepted that individual tanks were inferior to German heavies. But tanks operating with air support were superior to enemy tanks operating without it. The Sherman was designed as a component of a combined arms system that included artillery, infantry, and tactical air power. This system required extensive coordination. American armored divisions included organic air support officers who traveled with combat commands. These officers maintained radio contact with tactical air control centers. When ground forces identified targets, air support could be requested and delivered within minutes. The Germans had nothing comparable. Luftwaffe liaison officers existed, but with the Luftwaffe largely absent, their role was minimal. German ground forces could not call in airstrikes because no aircraft were available. Major General Maurice Rose, commanding the 3rd Armored Division, explained the advantage. "We do not fight fair. We use every advantage we possess. Air superiority is our greatest advantage. If aircraft can destroy enemy tanks without risking our crews, we call aircraft every time." The Falaise pocket, formed when Allied forces encircled German units attempting to retreat in August 1944, demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of air power. Approximately 100,000 German soldiers were trapped. Allied aircraft attacked continuously for days. The roads became choked with destroyed vehicles. The few units that escaped left most of their heavy equipment behind. For German tankers who survived Normandy, the experience fundamentally changed their understanding of armored combat. Technical superiority in individual vehicles no longer guaranteed tactical success. The Tiger might defeat 5 Shermans in direct combat, but a single P-47 could disable a Tiger before it engaged any Shermans. Lieutenant Otto Carius, a Tiger commander who became one of the highest-scoring tank aces, reflected on the experience in his memoirs. "We were better trained, our tanks were better protected, our guns were more powerful. Yet we lost. We lost because the Americans fought a different battle than we expected. They did not try to match our strength. They exploited our weakness. We had no answer to their aircraft." The psychological transformation was complete. German tank commanders who had entered Normandy confident in their technical superiority left demoralized. American tank crews experienced the opposite. Initial fear of German heavy armor gave way to confidence as the air support system proved reliable. The battle for Normandy demonstrated principles that would define armored warfare for generations. The Sherman tank, mocked by German commanders as inferior, proved effective through integration into a combined arms system that exploited American advantages. The psychological impact was profound. American tank crews gained confidence knowing aircraft would respond within minutes. German tank crews saw their advantages become irrelevant. The best armor meant nothing against rockets from above. The most powerful guns could not reach attacking aircraft. The industrial implications were significant. Germany invested enormous resources developing heavy tanks like the Tiger II and Panther, vehicles designed to dominate tank combat. These were expensive, complex, and slow to produce. Each Tiger II cost approximately 300,000 Reichsmarks and required months to manufacture. America produced over 49,000 Sherman tanks during the conflict. The Sherman was relatively simple, reliable, and could be manufactured rapidly. While individual Shermans were inferior to German heavies, the numerical advantage was overwhelming. More importantly, the Sherman's integration with air power multiplied its effectiveness far beyond its individual capabilities. The cost-effectiveness calculation was stark. Germany could produce one Tiger II in the time America produced dozens of Shermans. The Tiger II was superior in direct combat, but it operated without air support against Shermans that could call down fighter bombers within minutes. Post-conflict analysis by military historians consistently identified Allied air superiority as the decisive factor in the Normandy campaign. German forces were not defeated primarily through ground combat, but through systematic destruction of their ability to maneuver and concentrate forces. General Dwight Eisenhower addressed this in his assessment. The tank alone did not win Normandy. The aircraft alone did not win Normandy. The combination of ground and air forces, coordinated effectively, won Normandy. Our advantage was operational superiority in combining multiple systems for mutual support. The doctrinal revolution initiated in Normandy influenced all subsequent armored operations. The Korean conflict saw similar integration of armor and tactical air support. Modern armored doctrine assumes integration with air power as fundamental. The technology changed dramatically. Precision-guided munitions replaced unguided rockets. Helicopters complemented fixed-wing aircraft. Digital communication replaced radio coordination. But the principle remained constant. Armored forces operating with effective air support defeat armored forces operating without it, regardless of individual vehicle superiority. The Sherman's legacy was not primarily technical. Its legacy was doctrinal. The recognition that tactical air support integrated with armored operations created capabilities exceeding the sum of individual components revolutionized combined arms warfare. For German tankers who faced Shermans in Normandy, the experience remained traumatic decades later. Veterans consistently described the helplessness of facing air attack without effective counter. The sound of radial engines became associated with imminent destruction. Obergefreiter Karl Heinz, a Tiger commander who survived, described his experience in a 1980s interview. "We mocked the Sherman initially. It seemed like a toy compared to our Tigers. But the Sherman did not fight alone. It called down aircraft that we could not stop. By the end of July, we feared the Sherman not because of what it was, but because of what it represented. When we saw Shermans, we knew aircraft were coming. The human cost of the Normandy campaign was staggering. Allied forces suffered approximately 225,000 casualties. German casualties approached 400,000, including over 200,000 captured. For American tank crews, the casualty rate remained high despite air support. German anti-tank weapons destroyed numerous Shermans. Even with air superiority, armored combat remained lethal. But the air support system prevented casualties from being catastrophic. Engagements that might have resulted in entire formations being destroyed instead saw measured losses as aircraft neutralized German heavy armor before it could exploit tactical advantages. The psychological impact of this survival extended beyond the campaign. Veterans carried the memory of being saved by aircraft throughout their lives. The relationship between ground forces and supporting aviation developed mutual respect rare between different military branches. This mutual respect influenced post-conflict military organization. The United States Air Force, formed as an independent service in 1947, maintained close air support as a primary mission. The doctrine of combined arms, validated in Normandy, became foundational to American military thinking. The lessons from Normandy remain studied today at military academies worldwide. The integration of intelligence, communication, and multiple weapon systems demonstrated in Normandy serves as a template for contemporary joint operations. The principle that Normandy demonstrated remains central to military doctrine. Technological superiority in individual weapon systems matters less than operational superiority in integrating multiple systems effectively. Forces need not match enemy strengths directly if they can exploit enemy weaknesses asymmetrically. When German tank commanders mocked the Sherman as a toy tank with inferior armor and inadequate firepower, they were technically correct, but operationally blind. The Sherman was not designed to defeat Tigers in single combat. It was designed to operate within a system that made single combat unnecessary. The Sherman's role was to find enemy armor, fix it in place, and call down the Thunderbolts. This doctrinal insight revolutionized military thinking. The concept of joint operations, where multiple service branches work in coordinated fashion toward common objectives, traces its lineage directly to the lessons learned in Normandy. The mockery turned to respect, though for many German tankers that respect came too late. By the time Wehrmacht commanders understood American doctrine, they lacked capability to counter it. The Luftwaffe could not contest Allied air superiority. German industry could not produce enough capable aircraft or train sufficient pilots. In the end, the Sherman's legacy was the system it represented, a combined arms approach that integrated all available capabilities rather than relying on single system superiority, a doctrine that emphasized coordination over individual excellence, a recognition that modern warfare required orchestration of multiple capabilities. The German tank commanders who survived learned this lesson personally. Their superior vehicles had not saved them. Their excellent training had not protected them. Their tactical skill had not prevented defeat. They had lost to an enemy that refused to fight on German terms and instead imposed their own operational framework, where American advantages were decisive. 75 years later, military historians analyzing armored operations in Normandy consistently identify air-ground coordination as the decisive factor. Not the individual capability of Sherman versus Tiger, but the system that allowed Shermans to operate with air support against Tigers that operated alone. The Thunderbolts that German tankers feared were not just aircraft. They were the manifestation of a doctrinal revolution. They represented the understanding that warfare had evolved beyond duels between individual weapons platforms to complex orchestrations of multiple capabilities, supporting each other in real time. The Sherman called in the Thunderbolts not because it was weak, but because doing so was smart, effective, and ultimately decisive. That lesson, learned in the fields of Normandy amid the smoke of burning Tigers and the thunder of radial engines, remains the foundation of modern combined arms doctrine. The mockery ended, the respect began, and warfare changed forever.